So I wanted to just share, this is uh, actually the same place that I used to do the first introductory video. This is a space local to me. I'm very lucky to live near to this lovely river, and I've just come to this particular section. This is somewhere I've come to quite a lot in the past. It's lovely on a rainy day just watching the ripples and bubbles, and really good to just get to know different sections of the river actually. They'll have sort of different characters, but it's a great way to introduce you to some of the things that you can do. Just had a kingfisher fly past there. And another one. So just introducing you to some of the things that you can do as part of the nature connection that will be really relevant to this journey. So I like to think of nature connection in terms of layers, ways that we can explore, and that's really they're not separate, so you may well find that there are sort of combinations of layers in play at any one time. The layer that we very often operate in is actually the unconscious layer, and this is really probably one that we don't use so much for sort of mindful nature connection. So this is really when we're kind of walking around thinking about our to-do lists and maybe being on the phone or what have you, which is a sort of natural state for us to fall into in our sort of modern day and age. That in this state you're really not particularly aware of your surroundings, and there's something really sort of suddenly happens to grab your attention, like a deer running across the path or something, that sort of then brings you into a sort of more conscious layer. The next layer I'm going to talk about is what I call the mental layer, and the kind of scientific and analytical aspects would fall into this. So this is perhaps a lot of our experience in nature might fall into this category. If we're sort of maybe looking for particular birds or thinking about the facts that we know about particular trees or things. And these are all really, really useful and very valid, but they're probably less relevant from a nature connectedness perspective. But our mental layer really helps us, because this is where we tend to sort of set intentions and guide ourselves towards what we might want to be doing. So it's not something we're sort of dismissing or avoiding. It's just recognizing that this might be part of our sort of habitual pattern in terms of what we're normally doing. And so an invitation just to recognise that, and maybe just step away a little bit from the kind of thinking, analysing, problem solving aspect. So then comes the physical, and this will include all your senses, your body. So this will be things about sort of how you're physically interacting with your surroundings, with nature, and what's happening with your senses. So what can you smell, what can you hear, what can you see. So this is a really, really accessible pathway for most people, and the most really simple nature connection activity is just to stop and just look and see, what can I see with my eyes, what can I hear, what can I feel with my fingers, with my body. Just exploring the sense of smell and possibly even the sense of taste. If you know that something's safe to eat, responsible foraging can be a really great way to connect with nature. If you've got some abundant wild garlic or nettles or something that you know that you can safely eat, and obviously not taking the very last ones or damaging anything in the process, but it can be a really, really good way to connect with nature. Then we have the emotional layer. So this is really, how does it make me feel? What's my emotional connection with this place, with this tree. Just really tuning in to sort of heartfelt experience. What do I appreciate about this? So noticing maybe a sense of awe and wonder, noticing the beauty, just really connecting with that. So that's the emotional layer, and now we're really talking. This is really where the connections get made. So you may notice as you're exploring with your senses that the experience evokes a memory, evokes a feeling. So now we're into there being a mental layer, that memory, but then the feeling associated with it, and it's particularly perhaps with smells. Could be really quite profound, that you have a connection with a smell that reminds you of something, um, and perhaps an emotion that goes with it. And then there's what I'd call the spiritual aspect, and this is not really necessarily anything to do with religion. I mean, it can be, but this is really the kind of the part beyond. So it might be the experience of sensing a sort of oneness with everything. It can be about that sort of sense of awe and wonder as well. So that's kind of encapsulating maybe the spiritual and emotional. Those two often go closely together. It can be about meaning. So really, the natural world is rich with both metaphor and lots of things that spark the imagination. Things that can be very symbolic. So there are lots of cultures which do have their sort of belief system very much grounded in nature. And for some people that's something that they like to explore. But it can be something just as simple as this kind of sense of awe and wonder at the way that the universe is kind of put together. Vast scales, tiny scales, the just majesty of life, the miracle of it. So this is unique to everybody, and something that you're invited to explore if you'd like to. So those are really the key layers. And so when I'm coming down to a space like this, there are lots of different ways to approach it. So there's, as I've explained, about sort of exploring with the senses. Rivers obviously can be really symbolic. So there's kind of looking at from the point of view of kind of metaphor and meaning. And I'd really encourage you to go with what it means to you rather than what somebody else has written. It can be fantastic reading poems and things about rivers and so on. It might maybe help you to gain a different perspective. But I'd also invite you just to explore what comes up for you as you're sitting with the river or sitting in the woods or wherever you happen to be. And really just not striving particularly, but just sitting and seeing what comes up. And be just sitting and being and allowing the experience to come to you, I find is really the best way. But there's just with this river lots of reflections and ripples, flows, and obviously all the bird activity as well. Great deal just to really tune into. So I'm sitting here, for example, just seeing those ripples. I'm reminded of sort of emotional states, and an event happens, and these emotions kind of ripple outwards. So it's just kind of observing that, and making sure always to kind of come back to the direct experience if you can. So it's great to kind of follow a train of thought, but it's also good just to be able to kind of reset and come back to what's my experience of this, or what am I feeling in this moment as I'm watching these ripples. Maybe looking really closely, or taking a wider view, taking a sort of whole, really open, wide awareness. So that's quite a comprehensive overview to all the sorts of things that you can explore with nature connection. And I invite you to really pick anything of that appeals to you, and there'll be plenty more suggestions over the course of the journey.